What's up, YouTube? Bumping into the desk, shaking everything there. So we are 3/4 of the way to our 1,000 subscriber goal on YouTube. So if you haven't already, if you're enjoying the commentary, enjoying the content, feel free to hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, just lets you know whenever new videos are going live, like this one. So we played some Demir Shadow recently. We tried out the Coach Pingu list, ended up trophying with that. We'll have another video coming out on that list before too long. But I wanted to take another step, go back to the Grixis list, because we've been kind of messing around with different configurations, trying to see what feels good, what feels bad, what's working, what's not working. So for this one, I cut the second Underworld Breach, went with the Croxa. As you know, if you've watched my videos before, you know I'm a big fan of Croxa, mainly because I think the floor of it is a bit higher than Underworld Breach. The ceiling, definitely not as high, because like when you get a good Underworld Breach, it is lights out. But when you see multiple and that second one's kind of dead, it can feel awkward. Or when you kind of have to use that first one as just like a value breach, just to get a card or two, it can feel a little underwhelming. But Croaks, I feel like a lot of the times that 2-mana Raven's Crime plus like needing a little less graveyard fuel to really get a bunch of value out of it can be nice. So I just wanted to try it out, see what happened. Other than that, the list is basically the same as the last one that Ali MTG ran. Yeah, that's about it. Let's just go ahead and like go over the matches. Not too much to say. As always, have the deck list down below. Have a link to the Control Freak Discord if you want to come hang out, ask questions about Shadow or non-Shadow related Magic content, or even non-Magic content. We've also got like some zoo videos and stuff up. Have a link to the Twitter in case you want to know whenever a live stream's going live, and a link to the Twitch account as well, so you can come check out a live stream. So let's go ahead and hop into the first match. Little Twilight Zone music for you there. All right, so round number 1, we are on the play. I always love being on the play in Modern. We do have a Ragavan, Bolt, Channeler. I need to get a little bit better about my Ragavan decisions, because like I usually just force the Ragavan turn 1, and a lot of it's because Ragavan is the best 1-mana play in our deck by a mile if it connects. If it doesn't connect, or if it gets bolted, then it's just like a really big lightning rod, and your second thing's likely to survive. So there's a chance that more often than not, I should be just like playing out the Channeler here. So if they have a removal spell, I can follow it up with the Ragavan. But I really like the upside of playing the Ragavan turn 1 and kind of assuming that if I'm playing against something unfair, say Living End, that getting down the Ragavan turn 1 and getting a hit in is going to be a lot better. You also have that option of like, if I play Ragavan and they play Ragavan and I get to kill their Ragavan, get an attack in and follow it up with something else, like I am so far ahead of them at that point. But opponent's got a Neonate, which we're going to clear out just to get some attacks through. They do ditch a important to note, I bolted on their, it was second. I don't think it really matters if it's second main phase or in step, because if they ditch a Emrakul like they did in Goryo's Vengeance, it goes away on my turn, so they don't get to get it again and haste it. Goryo's Vengeance does say it goes away at the beginning of the next in step. So like if they Goryo's Vengeance on your in step, they get to untap with the thing and attack in. But if they Goryo's Vengeance on their turn, pass the turn, goes away on your turn, they don't get it on their next turn again. So Thoughtseize takes Emrakul. We had a bad issue with a video previously where we took a Yargle and they immediately top decked the Goryo's Vengeance. I didn't want to put myself in that position. Now, if they discard the Yargle, even if they draw into a Goryo's Vengeance, I have the mana for Spell Pierce to hit it. I mean, not next turn, but that turn I did. And I'll keep a Bowmaster on top because that gives me a chump blocker for a Yargle. Again, if they find the Goryo's Vengeance. But if they go to their turn and then ditch the Yargle, now I've got mana for Spell Piercing a Goryo's Vengeance. And we just get a bunch of Bowmaster pings, so that's kind of fun. Another one of those situations that I think Bowmaster right there is just raise the alarm. You can say it pinged them a couple times and the army token got a little bigger. I don't think that mattered. So, as you know, I've been very critical recently of like my evaluation surrounding Orcish Bowmaster. And I just want to make sure I'm giving it like a fair consideration instead of saying, oh yeah, it's busted, if I don't actually think or know it's busted. So opponent's going for a Thoughtseize. We do have a Spell Pierce. Hope they don't have a Veil of Summer, but I don't think they're a Veil of Summer deck. We do know they have a Cavern of Souls, which is kind of odd for a Goryo's Vengeance deck unless they have Craggenwick Cremator. Then it makes sense. So, as expected, there's the Cremator. Leave them with the Goryo's Vengeance because they don't have a way to get the Emrakul in the graveyard at the moment. So I kind of want to take my chances with that. But if they set up a Craggenwick Cremator, it just kills me. Dress Down, actually a really, really good draw here. So if our opponent does end up like getting a way to get Emrakul in the yard, Goryo's Vengeance it back. After the Goryo's resolves, we can Dress Down. The Emrakul loses haste, and we get to go to our turn. I should have said sideboarding against that deck. Brought in Dress Down, brought in Unlicensed Hearse, and trimmed on something that wasn't those. I know that's very specific. Alright, opponent gets a Ragavan. Take our Ragavan, get a Ragavan turn 2. They know we don't have a removal spell. Fortunately, we don't have a removal spell again. If they want to pay for this Spell Pierce and they're not going to have Ragavan mana, so they're just going to dash Ragavan again, which is annoying, but fine. We just got to do something about this whole no black mana thing. Like a black source off the top. All right. I was going to say a black source off the top to be able to dash or to flash in Bowmaster would have been nice. We could have played Channeler there, but our opponent's got the ability to go get like a Grave Hate piece off of Saga and then Rin Ping the Channeler, and we're kind of in a rough spot. So that's more of a, hey, maybe we could find a way to extend the game a little bit longer, but I don't think we're in a position to win. We can't deal with the Rin. We can't deal with the Ragavan at the moment. So gonna dash Ragavan into our hearse. That's fine. I know I've said it before at least once. I do think people get kind of, what's the word for it, tunnel visioned on dashing Ragavan. And you do have to understand, like, it's not an incredibly, what's the word, efficient play. Like, you use up a lot of extra mana dashing Ragavan instead of just like playing it out and seeing if it survives. But we do get to Bowmaster down a Ragavan here, which is, I guess, kind of nice. I also think I'm getting to the point where I believe Ragavan needs to get boarded out like pretty aggressively in any of these Grixis, whatever Bowmaster mirrors, because at a certain point, it's just going to get killed by everything. Like, all right, I got bolts, heats, drown in the lock, dress down, Bowmaster. Like, those early turns, if I did not want to get hit by Ragavan, I could avoid getting hit by Ragavan. I think that's what I'm trying to express. Like, I chose to play out Unlicensed Hearse and tap off of Unholy Heat or Bolt mana because I feel like I'm not losing to Ragavan post board. He said optimistically. All right. Really don't want to go down to 6 life. Ironically, one of the few times I wish I had something like Colligan's Command. So if opponent went to crack this Wooded Foothills, I could respond with blowing up the EE. But we'll just have to settle for eating their yard. Little Tarmogoofy. So let's just drop down the EE. Get in our attack. I can hold on to this dress down. And opponent scoops it up. I could also like make the attack in with the token and the Gigantha, and if they block, dress down, shrink the Tarmogoyf. But I feel like I'd rather just get the Tarmogoyf off the battlefield. So relatively good hand. We've got turn 1 Ragavan if they have like a Goyf or something. We've got Alpine Moon for Saga. If they had Ren in 6, it would be a little annoying, but counter the Goyf instead of kill it to play around Apostle's Blessing. Iteration does find us a couple lands, so not the most exciting. Tarmogoofy numero 2. Bowmaster's decent. I also wonder if I should have been more aggressive with just like using the expressive iteration this turn. Like, I don't really have things answered. I got him kind of like slightly annoyed. Like, hey, if you dash a Ragavan, I can Bowmaster, but if you just play a Goyf, I'm dress downing. But now that I've picked up a Terminate, I feel a little bit better. This has been a huge issue for me in with expressive iteration recently, is the number of times that I've iterationed and drawn 2 lands out of my 3 cards when I really need iteration to be 2 live pieces of something. Like, they don't have to be great, they just need to be not dead draws. But at the same time, we are just kind of rocking and rolling along with the Bowmaster token. Could have played out Gigantha there, but I kind of wanted to have a big turn of, oh, they play land Gigantha. I get to terminate, drop a second Bowmaster, and then get in a big hit. But instead, opponent decides to be rude and just kill our Bowmaster. Take our Alpine Moon and have the answer to the Gigantha. Like this is the point where I wish Gigant or Expressive Iteration had just given me like a little more gas. It's another one or two things to do. Could have played out the Alpine Moon earlier, just to like get ahead of Saga. But I kind of decided not to in fear of something like EE or Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, whatever the case may be. Maybe that was a bad choice because, like, if I'm not naming Urza's Saga, then I'm not naming anything, and I kind of wanted that strip mine mode of like, oh, you played one out, you thought it was safe, Alpine Moon, go. That was probably too greedy. Like, I probably should have just accepted playing out the Alpine Moon earlier. Maybe if I was on a second Alpine Moon, I could make an argument. So dress down in response to the Wren to try to find a counter spell. Since I know they're going to be able to get back lands and pay for Spell Pierce with the One Ring next turn. If they got back another land. So I have to blow up the Wren right now. We got a ring and we got a post-ring land drop of shame. Justice. But now, if we find something live, I said if we find something live, a spell of some sort, like we've got Kroxa, Underworld Breach, we've got Four Shadows that we haven't seen a copy of yet. We've got more Ragavans. We've got, I don't even know what else. Got more iterations. Iterations hitting iterations. Okay. That's good. Dress down Shadow. That's lethal. We take those. Little Fable. Little push. Fable into push. Second Fable. Rough. And land. Bolt. Oof. So, not going quite as well for us as it did the first league we played this. We're only in the second match, and we are like 1-0, about to fall to 1-1. But I do think that Bowmaster, like, since Bowmaster takes the place of one of the grindy mid-range cards in the list, like Ledger Shredder, I do think you are at the mercy of your top decks a lot more than you would be. So just keep that in mind if you decide to register Bowmasters. Like, if Bowmaster's good, cool. If Bowmaster's not good, you don't really have the ability to power into better things. So we got some sort of like Boros Hammertime deck. Because I see Ginger Brute, which you're not going to have Ginger Brute if you're not playing equipment. I see Ragavan Bolt, 2 Reprieve. So not entirely sure what we're up against. I'm assuming it's like Boros Hammertime. But I don't know if like Bolt and Ragavan are enough of a reason to go red. Reprieve, I guess, is kind of cool. Absolutely block a Ginger Brute. Magnetic Theft. So we found our reason to go red. If you don't know Magnetic Theft, it's a 1 red instant. You can attach an equipment to a creature. So in this case, attach a Colossus Hammer to a to a Ginger Brute. Unfortunately, if your opponent like doesn't let you resolve the magnetic theft, then it's a little less exciting. All right, so they've got a live Saga. Finding lightning bolt's a really good pickup there, especially with just like having another channeler. They do go for reprieve. I don't really think reprieve is the right answer here, mainly because like you're not progressing the board at all. I think you need to have something on board. So I think I would have liked to seen them make a token, even though the token dies. Like you don't know that it's dying. But if you just go token, untap, token, get Shadow Spear, strap up Shadow Spear, or something like that, then you can very easily get back in that game. All right, so we've got a Giver and a Hammer. Assuming with that attack, it probably means magnetic theft, because otherwise you're just holding up the Giver for the next thing. We do have the Drowning Lock for the Giver, which thankfully the magnetic theft gives us the card in the yard. I also really appreciate this out of my opponent, just getting Shadow Spear with their Stoneforge Mystic. I say it all the time that I think Stoneforge players get really greedy and like grab Cauldra immediately. Just, oh, if Stoneforge lives, I've got a Cauldra. But in like the removal heavy matchups, the likelihood of Stoneforge living is pretty low. So I really like just getting the Shadow Spear here and saying like, hey, any of my threat that I top deck is going to be a pretty positive force. Go for reprieve on the Channeler. I flash in a Bowmaster, so I get an extra ping here. Make my army token a tad tiny bit larger. Down Shadow Spear, but I get another Bowmaster ping. I definitely want to keep Dress down in the face of like Saga tokens, which if they find an answer to Alpine Moon, Saga tokens is a way they could get back into the game. If they don't, then Dress Down can just stop like Sanctifier on Vec. It can stop Giver of Runes, Stoneforge, Pure Steel Paladin, Ginger Brute. So it's pretty nice to have. Nice little 2 over hammer. So we're up to 2-1. Go into match 4. We're on the play. One land with a Ragavan, a Channeler. It's an okay hand. Like, if I'm going to lead on this Ragavan, I absolutely need to lead on the Bauble as well. Because the way that this hand falls apart is not seeing the second or third land. And this is kind of what I mentioned earlier, playing out the Ragavan instead of the Channeler Bauble on turn 1, because if you're up against something unfair, a la Living End, then having the Ragavan down is worth a lot more than hoping that the Channeler will get there. So we see Otawara is their second land. They do have a forest. They don't have a Cascade spell currently, and who looks at it? Striped Riverwinder and Architects of Will. Drawing into a grief. But if we hit them, put a black card in our hand, then we can potentially grief away something. Which is possibly worth it. I'm just going to wait for the Cycler, go for the Bowmaster. Like, I think griefing away a redundant copy of a cycle card is probably worse than just like getting the Bowmaster down and saying, hey, you're going to be dead next turn if you don't find the Undying effect. Or not Undying effect, the Living End effect. Which they do. Unholy Heat my own Bowmaster so that I get that back with the rest of it. We get an extra ping. They get an Architects of Will trigger. I'm not dead on the crackback. I can block the River Winder and the Architects of Will. And really unfortunate that island or that watery grave was not a red source, or we could have gone for the double bolt. So they tapped off of force and negation, which is why I'm firing off this lightning bolt right now. Pass our turn. Go for the Croxa first, in case their hand is something like 3 lands, force and negation, blue card, something like that. Then I give myself the chance of making them discard the force of negation fodder. It's not a huge chance, but it's non-zero. And then luckily Bolt does resolve, so we pick up a game 1 win over Living End without needing a single counter spell. Sideboarding against Living End, like all of my spot removals coming out, anything that says counter something is coming in, even like Mystical Dispute, because hey, Mystical Dispute counters a force of negation. We had the Demir video yesterday, and I actually think there's a lot of merit to just running like 4 copies of Dolphy in the sideboard. Actually really liked that because it gives you not only incidental hate in matchups like this, but it gives you the ability to board out stuff like Fatal Push and bad Fatal Push matchups, just straight 1-for-1 for 4 Dolphy. Or if like Unholy Heat is bad, Fatal Push is bad, you can just straight up 1-for-1 board those out. And that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So we'll get in with Ragavan. All I can do is pass and hope that my opponent thinks that I've got another like Spell Pierce or Flusterstorm and doesn't just immediately go for the Cascade spell. Unfortunately, they do. I don't have an answer for it, so go back to our turn with a hope and a prayer. All right. Let's talk about some of the thought process here. I'm trying to figure out if my opponent attacks back, what can I do to set myself up with enough life to get down shadows and maybe have a chance of attacking back for lethal if they don't have anything, or if I find another land set up Drown in the Lock of Blocker to attack back. Do I need to fetch and shock? Do I need to just fetch? Do I need to like block a certain thing? Do I need like what is the breakdown of what I have to accomplish here? So first off, I need to get down below 13 life. There's a good chance my opponent's going to attack on their turn. Probably with like the Wraith and the River Winder, might be with everything. So how do I determine like what my plan of action needs to be? And I'm thinking about all this before I play the Channeler because I want to know going into my opponent's turn what my plan is in any situation I can come up with. For example, if they bounce my Channeler, if they have like a Brazen Borrower, Sky Turtle, something like that, then the game's just over because they hit me for 10 and I can't block the Street Wraith next turn. So that's out of the equation. Can't beat that. I play out the Channeler. If I block the Shardless Agent, kill the Shardless Agent, I take 8, I go to 5, and I get to untap, play out 2 Shadows. And then if I don't find another way to lose life, then I run the risk of them hitting me with Street Wraith down to 2, having a blocker with the River Winder, Maybe they don't have another blocker and I can get there. But if they do have another blocker, then the channeler's not lethal and I can't fetch and shock to get the Drown in the Lock online. If I block the River Winder, take 3 or 5, go to preferably 3, go to 10, could take 5, go to 8, and then drop down double shadow, it means they've got 2 whole turns that I'm safe from taking Street Wraith attacks. And in those 2 turns, I get to untap with a shadow, maybe find another land like a fetch land for Drown in the Lock to kill the shadow or to kill the Street Wraith. Maybe it's a way to lose life to get around lethal blockers or potential lethal stopping blockers, something like that. But blocking the River Winder gives me more potential outs because of the life that I get to save. So blocking the River Winder. If they attacked with the Shardless Agent, still blocking the River Winder, even if I could eat the Shardless Agent. As we see, we did not find the land drop. Also puts puts Channeler back in the yard in case they do find like another living end effect. But then opponent kind of like throws all the math out the window because they find a Fury to kill a Shadow, which would be worse, except they just gave me the out of finding a fetch land for lethal. Because they're going to hit me for 5 down to 5. If I find a fetch land, I fetch and shock down to 2. Drown and lock the Fury if they don't have a Force of Negation. And get to kill on the backswing. So we find the fetch land. We pray to a higher power. And we attack him with a shadow. Nice. So, just remember, there are plenty of times that your opponent can mess up and give you a little bit of a free win there. I think for them, the correct line, they had the Fury, they knew about the Fury. I think the correct line is Fury down one of the shadows and probably just attack with probably just the Wraith. Let's see, I was at 10. So you could attack with the River Winder and the Wraith, but the River Winder doesn't really matter. Actually, no, because they marked the damage on the second shadow. So it should have been attack with the Wraith and the River Winder, no attack with the Shardless Agent. That's because if the Wraith hits me and puts me down to 7, my shadow becomes a 6/6. It's already got 1 point marked on it by the Fury, so it dies to the River Winder. So yeah, it was just attack with the Wraith and the River Winder. Leave back the Fury and the Shardless Agent. Put me down to 3. Or down to 2, sorry, because they're dealing 8. I was at 10. Put me down to 2. Have a lethal Street Wraith next turn or Shardless Agent. I'd have to Drown in the Lock the Street Wraith, which means you just got Fury, River Winder, Shardless Agent. Any one of those that connects kills me. So, yeah. No reason to attack with the Shardless Agent. Shadow math. Always fun. So on the play, round 4, we got Bubble and a Channeler. We need to find a land very, very quickly. Is this round 4? This might be round 5. Soulscar Mage Giganta gives away that it's prowess pretty quickly. You get to take away an Underworld Breach, but still have to stare down double Soulscar Mages. Also, very much appreciate my opponent giving away the 2 prowess triggers there by just going for the bobble. Swift Spear with another bolt. It's a bigger attack than I wanted to take that turn, but at least they're down to 1 card, so that's a plus. We've got a little bit of power to put on board. If we attack through with Channeler, we do have Bowmaster that can kind of clog up the ground a little bit. Since we found another land, we have access to Drown in the Lock. Also really nice for us. Get down Bowmaster, get some bodies. Fetch up just a tapped Steam Vents there to hold up Drown in the Lock, but we don't have to fire it off. Little Jeggy. Giganta, as the kids call him. 1 card left in hand with a Fiery Islet. So reasonable chance that our opponent's going to have to draw a card off Islet, in which case Bowmaster would trigger again. Or second Bowmaster would trigger again. Attack with the army token because I get this fun little line of ping something. Mistake on the Bowmaster. I should have pinged them instead of the blocker because the army token was going to grow anyway, but I kind of forgot that the army token was growing. So you live and you learn. Soul Scar off the rip. We know they have mutagenic growth in their deck, but I will just like go ahead and fire off the Unholy Heat because if they don't have the growth, then that's great for me. Opponent doing their best impression of a deck that doesn't miss creatures. Wait until end of turn to go for the kill on this Sprite Dragon, which I definitely think the Sprite Dragon's the bigger threat compared to the Soulscar Mage. Not that Soulscar Mage is a walk in the park, but I'm just not playing out creatures into it. And we are up 5 cards to 2. We know one of those is Giganta, so fingers crossed we get to live a little bit. Upkeep, kill the Giganta. So we can go ahead and get our attack in with Channeler. Keep the land on top because I want to go ahead and get down Ragavan. Hope that my opponent doesn't have too scary of a follow-up. So double 1-drops is pretty reasonable. Double 1-drops with the mutagenic growth. So it does create a little bit of an awkward situation where I probably have to just like play out the EE on 1 and kind of risk hitting all of our dudes. See the bolt on top. Keep it there because if my opponent has a follow-up threat, then I can keep the bolt there and just draw into it. If they don't have a follow-up threat, then I can shuffle away the bolt with the Polluted Delta. We see them Vapor Snag their own Channeler, so we know they're going to have a follow-up threat, which makes drawing the bolt a lot more enticing. I'm not about to Thoughtseize in the face of being at 4 life. Shadow pretty good. Breach pretty better. So I get to Vapor Snag, play some sort of threat. I can't do anything about it. So we will scoop it up there. Then just go like Swift Spear, Swift Spear, Swift Spear, mutagenic growth, whatever the case may be. They know I've got a Giganta and a Shadow and 1 unknown, and my 1 unknown's not beating 3 hasty creatures. All right. So we could have gone for, or no, we drew Thoughtseize on their turns. We couldn't Thoughtseize. But we do have the ability to just unholy heat things until they burn into the abyss. I will say, as we're starting this match, or starting this game 3, I do think this is like one of the best games I have played against Prowess ever. So if you're looking for a let me toot my own horn here, a Shadow Masterclass against Prowess, I think this is a pretty good match. So we thought see Underworld Breach, double bolt, double light up the stage. So opponent's got a lot of grind potential in their hand. We're at 14 life already, so we do have to be a little bit careful of our life total. They're not firing off spells, so I don't want to fire off spells. And we are an instant or an enchantment away from getting Delirium online. So if we need to just like fire off the dress down to draw some cards, we can, or to draw a card, get Delirium online, we can. Unlicensed Hearse here protects us from another copy of Underworld Breach. Terminate gets instant in the yard. Also make sure that the Soulscar Mage just dies instead of having to worry about like bolt in response. We'll just keep working on keeping their graveyard clear. Croxa is a really good pickup, but I don't really feel like I have to play Croxa just yet. Like, I'm really trying to get Croxa to a point where they're running out of resources, and then I get to drop down Croxa. But at the moment, like, I'm happy just having Delirium available, keeping their yard at bay. Could have eaten the bolts with Hearse at the end of their turn, but I wanted to keep Drowning the Lock online in case they had an expressive iteration. But instead, we just have all the bolts in the world. And my thought here is like, all right, I'm in reasonable shape as long as my opponent doesn't have the 4th copy of Lightning Bolt. Let's see. So, yeah. Opponent's got the Channeler, the Double Soulscar Mage. We're dress downing at the end of our turn to shut off Prowess on the Soulscar Mages. That way, if they do attack, I can just like block 1, heat 1, hold up, drown in the lock, whatever the case may be. They do have the 4th copy of Lightning Bolt, which makes life a little more difficult. But I do still get to turn off these Prowess triggers, turn Channeler into a 1/1. Sprite Dragon doesn't get haste. And now they're out of cards, at least on their turn. So I know everything that they have access to. They've already used all 4 lightning bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 3. So I know they can't top deck a bolt. Soulscar Mage coming off the top. Croxa nukes a card out of the yard. I can safely escape Croxa because I know Soulscar Mage is coming off the top. So even if they attack in or attack all out into the Croxa, I'm not dead. Bowmaster shoots down a Channeler, cruise up the Hearse, attack, drown in the lock one of the blockers. And why did we stop playing? There we go. Drown and lock a blocker, and we have lethal. Super, super sick game. I think that the patience was really rewarding, or really rewarded, for not like losing any unnecessary life early, since my opponent did see 4 lightning bolts, and they saw a lava dart that they didn't even play that got exiled with one of the light up the stages. They saw triple soul scar, a sprite dragon, I think double channeler, double light up the stage, all 4 bolts. Like, pretty insane amount of stuff to fight through. And yet we were able to, because we stayed patient. We stayed true to our game plan of not being too overly aggressive with like our life total, and it paid out. So we did end up with a 4-1 there. Really nice league. Thoughts on the Grixis shell? I do, as much as I hate to say it, I do kind of miss Ledger Shredder. And I do want to point out that I don't think Ledger Shredder is as bad right now as people would seem to think it is with Bowmaster. Like, Bowmaster actually does a really sketchy job against Shredder in the mirror, because yes, you do get to draw that extra card with Shredder, trigger the Bowmaster, but for every point that Bowmaster is growing because you drew, if you discard a non-land card, the Ledger Shredder is growing by just as much. So you have that army token on lockdown. The Bowmaster's not pinging down the Shredder. Your Shredder flies over Bowmaster tokens, and you have the ability to just like cycle into more gas a lot more consistently than the Bowmaster versions. So I do think at least one of my next leagues is going to be with Ledger Shredder and Croxa, maybe a couple Bowmasters, but I'm actually really considering Ledger Shredder over some number of Ragavan. And it's mostly because in these mirrors, Ragavan's just awful. Like, it dies to push, bolt, heat, channeler, posing Ragavans, shadow, drown in the lock, Bowmaster, terminate, EE, dress down. It just gets stopped a lot. So I wonder if maybe like cut a rag, cut a couple Bowmaster, cut an Underworld Breach, a Spell Pierce or something, find room for like another Croxa, 2 or 3 Shredder, whatever the case may be, some number of stuff, and go from there just to see what happens. And sideboard's like pretty fine. I play a very similar sideboard in Dimir with like 1 Hearse, 1 Chalice, an EE, 2 Turok, 2 Flusterstorm, 2 Dress Down. So sideboard I think is pretty comfortable to me. But yeah, that's Grixis. Hope you're still liking it. As always, if you're enjoying the video, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Other than that, I'll catch y'all all back live later. Hope y'all have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Adios for now.